So, as I promised, I'd like to do a video on slavery. We look at slavery through Western eyes, and it's a terrible thing, and indeed it is. The Torah has a concept of slavery, which is mitigated, but of course it wasn't that way with most of the world. The slavery in the Torah has protection, legal protection for the slave, and legal consequences if he's injured or killed. And of course, a Jewish slave is not really a Jewish slave. A Jewish slave is really just a debt repayment program where you work for somebody. But slavery isn't such a great thing, but it was one of the things I mentioned in the last video, which Noah introduced to the world. One of the four things, right? He introduced planting a vineyard, getting drunk, swearing, I should say cursing, and slavery. So, of course, you know the story that he cursed when he got drunk and his children saw him naked. So the first one did something, to difference of opinion, what he did to his father. Either he had, sexual relations with him or castrated him. And the other two, Shem and Yafet, the other two sons, walked backwards and respectively covered up his father. Anyways, that's when he cursed the son of Ham, who, according to opinions, actually also may have taken part in that, whatever crime was committed against him, whatever abuse, and cursed him to be a slave. But the interesting thing is the Midrash says that he already had the idea before all this happened. When he was on the boat, slaving away, trying to feed all those animals, and he said, I got 3 sons, we're all working our head off. I think after I get off of this boat, I'm going to have a 4th son, and that 4th son will serve us, will serve all of us, will be a slave to us. So he had that notion already, so it's very interesting. Was God perhaps trying to tell him that's a terrible idea you're introducing into the world? Now, I have no doubt it would have been introduced in the world, the great powers of the world, even before the Babylonians and the Romans and the Greeks. Somebody would have thought of it, but why did he have to introduce it? So perhaps God had something happen to him where he couldn't have a 4th son, so he could never implement that plan, but instead he cursed his grandson to be the first slave. So I'd like to understand what's going on, and I'd really like to understand the downfall of Noach. I'd like help with that. What happened to this guy who was called a tzaddik? As I mentioned in the last video, he fed the world. The whole world was on that boat, and they all had different feeding schedule. He fed all the animals. He didn't sleep at all. At the end, he was bitten by a lion because his lunch was late. He became lame, and he got off the boat. He just wanted to get drunk, and then he ended up having to curse, and so one thing led to the next. But what was going on? Why the downfall? What happened? What was the trauma that he was reacting to? How would it have helped? Is it just a simple case of drowning out your sorrow? Is there something more that was going on here? As I said in the last video, he didn't convince anybody. Well, he had survivor's guilt, didn't convince anybody to join him, and he saw the world coming to an end and started again. But instead of picking up and saying, wow, I can now sort of morally guide a new world with new values, it all fell apart and introduced not such good things into the world. So please help me out. What's going on here? Tell me about the downfall of Noach. Talk to me about slavery, how that all fits together. Thank you. Love you all.